Hello and welcome to TelecomTV. My name is Martyn Warwick. We're here in Santa Clara in California in the United States at the ETSI NFV ISG, and it's the 7th such meeting. And I'm talking with Tim Dyer, who is VP of Sales and Business Development at ConteXtream. Tim, thanks for talking to us. What role does ConteXtream play in the NFV ecosystem?
ConteXtream is a software-defined network fabric for carriers, and we've been focused on the carrier space for the last 7 years, and specifically in the area of software-defined networking and the utilization of our fabric in a distributed fashion in order to facilitate the migration to NFV.
Okay. Now, NFV, in a very short time, a couple of years, has progressed from a sort of a theory to practice, and the industry is now conducting various proof of concepts and other such exercises prior to the full-scale, widespread testing of the technology and eventually to commercial rollout. Can you tell us something about the proofs of concept that ConteXtream is involved with?
Ironically, the NFV initiative actually started before it became public, as many of these things do. And we had begun years ago working on elastic cloud networking application in the mobile environment. And it was, in essence, an NFV application for mobility. And that application had existed for some period of time with a very large Tier 1 operator here in the States as a precursor to NFV. So we've been working in this space for a number of years now. In fact, we had done a proof of concept over 2 years ago, demonstrating that technology with a couple of very large ecosystem partners. Since that, we've had the introduction to the ETSI forum, and as well as some standards in a variety of bodies to support these initiatives and efforts. And to that end, we've got multiple proof of concepts that were based largely upon our deployment scenarios that we had done for mobility as well as for a very large cable operator. So we have roughly 100 million customers already running through our software fabric, and now it's up to us to productize that and to introduce those concepts into the NFV arena.
Always in the comms and IT industry throughout the centuries, it seems like, the emphasis has always been on making things open. And every time just about that openness never actually appears. Proprietary de facto standards appear, and it's all about different companies doing their own thing and then adapting and adopting here and there to try and make a sort of patch it together. What about standards and openness as far as NFV is concerned? Are we going to be able to avoid that trap of locking people into a particular proprietariness again?
I actually think we will. And the reason why I think that is, and by the way, standards aren't necessarily a bad thing. When you look at mobile, which I mentioned just a minute ago, 3GPP has actually done great things to allow for basically the globalization of mobility. And so it's not always a negative. That said, as we look to transform these network infrastructures, we have to look to bodies such as ETSI and a driving force for the carrier community or the global service provider community to drive adoption or change in those standards. Because the reason why we wind up with these closed, locked-in systems is people build monoliths, and they built monoliths based on proprietary platforms. And what people are looking at NFV to do is decouple all of that, not just a piece of it. We actually want to get atomic with these functions. So when I've got a serving gateway or packet gateway that's terminating a GTP session from a subscriber handset, I want to be able to create the termination and the NAT function separately as just a very small example of what I'd like to do. And that's actually what the carriers are telling us, is they would like to see atomic functions to be totally broken apart and hosted on COTS. And that way they can go not just up into the cloud, but they can actually push the tentacles of their network farther and farther to the edge so they can start doing more creative things closer to the edge of their networks as well.
Thank you. What about then ETSI within this? You've said that it's important. What is ETSI? Is it an honest broker? Is it an enabler in this context?
I'd say it's an enabler. It's funny, I chuckled internally when you said an honest broker. But I believe that they are clearly an enabler. And the movement has just been phenomenal. We've gone from the very first meeting in Sofia Antipolis with a handful of people in a room drinking out of a single pot of coffee to what we see now with literally hundreds of people engaged on a global basis. And I think that just that presence and that awareness speaks volumes for the work that they're doing. And now, if you look at also the chatter and the standards, quasi-standards work that they're pushing in the background, we're seeing all kinds of very meaningful things. So these POCs that you talked about, they're real-world examples and use cases that actually will lead to productization as well as market adoption, as well as the intrinsic benefits of NFV overall to lower cost, lower your fault domains, increase visibility, all the things that we claim as value that we want to extract. We're beginning to see in these use cases.
Do you have any NFV products available right now? And what are they? I know you skirted around the issue. And what's in the pipeline? What's coming up next?
All right, so we see several, as I said, we're an SDN provider. And we see several use cases and applications for SDN across a multitude of operators. And as I said, we have already deployed pre-standard solutions. And now we're pushing standards throughout the standards bodies and IETF, using the ETSI folks as well, and also using Open Daylight as means to facilitate some of our concepts. And those, those important concepts are going to be around orchestration, around management, and around OpenFlow, and around Lisp is lastly our belief. And we're the Lisp contributor to the Open Daylight initiative. So what we are doing is we've already productized and we have available for demonstration using this new framework our existing use cases, and now we're migrating for demonstration and for trial the second set of use cases around virtual EPC, virtual SBC, virtualization of a slew of different products and technology to be incorporated in the carrier environment.
Great stuff. Tim Dyer, thank you.
Thank you.